Are we live? I don't know. Let's see.
Are we live, Liza?
We are live, so hello to everybody who's already here. But let's see if
anything on Tucker's page yet.
Still.
Yeah, and you put dual broadcast, Eliza, on StreamYard. You entered.
I have it connected to her channel.
Wow.
You see it, honey? Wow, this is crazy. We might have to just send the link to you guys, or just have the link reshare it on our story.
I have no idea how I did it before.
No, because you said it says in StreamYard, so you were able to see that. Hi, everybody.
Hi, everyone. So sorry about the technical difficulties.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah,
You have lots of great information.
Yeah.
There's a live. It says someone says a live link.
Yeah, because I shared the link and it didn't direct to.
Okay,
so that's why.
Yeah. Because you.
Okay, so I'm just going to use the link off of yours because we're not going to be able to get this working correctly and send them to yours.
Okay.
I don't know how well it's going to work, but we're going to try. Hold on. This might echo for a second.
We are live now.
Your old one's still up. That's why.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I don't know why that's really not working. Huh.
Well, what, honey? All right. Well, I'm about to send you the link.
Okay.
All right. So
this is the second try for the people who are here.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
You guys can go ahead and start chatting. I'm going to just get our people on board.
Oh, yeah, all right.
Okay. Send it to all of those. Okay, well, to start this over, thank you everybody who is here probably for a second time. We are having some technical difficulties. We're just going to move past it. So these two are going to talk about some cancer topics today. Just from me, I'll be the moderator who's up over here just making sure things go smoothly. If you guys have any questions, just put them in the chat below. I'm going to try and keep track of as many as I can. And throughout the live stream, I'll be asking both Dr. Jones and Courtney about these questions so you guys can get an answer. We'll also have a bit of a Q&A at the very end as well. So just put anything you have in there. And otherwise, I'll turn it over to these two.
So I'm Dr. Jones.
Hi.
And this is Tucker Courtney, who's
I'm Courtney Budzyn, otherwise known as Linda Budzyn, mom of TuckerBudzyn. That's why my name is Tucker.
Yes, Tucker.
Because originally this is supposed to be on our channel as well, but it didn't work out that way. But you're going to be seeing some comments from some people in a few minutes here. But I'm trying to get them in the right spot. So, but yeah, we just wanted to partner up and talk all things dog health today.
Yes, and in particular, and this is Eliza, who also happens to be my daughter, who's I've recruited as the moderator. And in particular, we're focusing on cancer, which is a big, if anything, to be a really big topic, period, as we're just seeing more. It seems to me like we're seeing more dogs that have cancer, and they seem to be getting it younger. Mm-hmm. And when I look at all the different questions that we get on YouTube, so many of the health ones are related to cancer. Either why did this happen to my dog? What can I do to potentially prevent it? And if my dog has it, is there any alternative treatments? So we're going to talk about a whole bunch of those things today. And we wanted to give everybody a chance to get on. We thought we did, but then we have technical issues. And then
just make sure.
Courtney, is that working now?
Well, what I did is I posted this link to our story. So hopefully people will see that.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like we're good on that end, and my husband's posting it to Facebook and everywhere else. So you'll slowly start to see more people come in. Hopefully, yeah.
So would you give you that? Okay. So why don't we just get going? Because we do have a bunch of things that I wanted to cover today, and
we're really excited to get into it because this stuff's important, and I think a lot of people just don't know where to start with. What to do and what not to do. So
exactly.
Oh, sorry.
So Eliza, is that
technical difficulties? That's my bad.
Okay. Can I just share that?
Go right into it.
You want to show your screen? Yes. Here we go. And I will put myself over there. There you go.
There. Okay, so there's our live. And first, you guys, welcome and really thanks for being here. And really happy that we're getting to do this with Todd and Tucker and Courtney. Okay. And this is great, and just especially this huge audience that you have of just really involved dog parents, but especially maybe not, you guys haven't heard a whole lot of health related stuff. So I'm kind of happy that we can sort of talk about that, but hopefully maybe in not as much a serious way. And we definitely wanted to leave a bunch of time in between to start to answer a bunch of your questions as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we usually get with a whole bunch of, I start talking about raw dog food and natural remedy this, right? And then I start getting a bunch of questions. So it'll be nice for people to get a chance to ask you questions since you're the one with the license, not me.
So for those of you who don't know me, I was born and raised on a small town, in a farm in a small town called Lillooet. I always wanted to be a veterinarian, and it turned out that's what I did. And there I am in the far left of that picture, hanging out with one of our cats who was named Beauty. And then I graduated in 1992 from the University of Saskatchewan with my DVM. I practiced for 17 years, owning the Nelson Animal Hospital, a small town here in Canada, Nelson, BC. And then that's right. And I wrote my first book in 2004 called Dr. Jones's Book of Home Remedies for Dogs and Cats. And since that time, we've got lots of articles and videos, and we even held a couple of live seminars. But in particular, and as I said earlier, all the questions I got, so many was about cancer, either being in veterinary practice, and especially so now on YouTube and some of the social media sites with all the different people having specific health questions. And I just wanted to go into, like, in general, how common it is. So they're saying upwards of 1 in 4 dogs. So it's like 20%, 25% of all dogs at some point in their life are going to develop cancer. And they say over half the dogs, 50% of dogs over the age of 10 are going to develop cancer. And yes, they're generally, especially when I was in practice, we're kind of told we're seeing more cancer because our dogs are living longer. And maybe it's some of your guys' experience as well too, but sure, with mine, it seemed that I was even seeing dogs at younger ages getting cancer. And it sort of leads you to think, oh, like, why is that? Right? I mean, I'm sure, Courtney, you've had many people ask you the same thing. Like, they're probably seeing your dogs get cancer young.
So many dogs just in our circle recently that have died so young. And the first question is like, why? Because at least at an older age, it sort of makes sense. But when they're young, like 4 or 5, you're just like, what caused this? Like, how does this even happen in the first?
Yeah. And it just, especially when you look at, I mean, I understand how people, like, we live for 75 years or 80 years, but it just seems like, why would a 5-year-old dog? And I put this slide in particular with Tucker and Todd, but it's as dog breeds, like Goldens have the highest incidence of cancer. There's a couple different types. One called hemangiosarcoma, which is a cancer of the lining of the red blood cells. And actually, my first dog in practice, that's what he died of.
Tucker's dad died of that as well.
Right. Mm-hmm. And another was called lymphosarcoma, cancer of the lymph node cells. But they're saying, and even while I was in practice, the breed's lifespan got lower, like the average lifespan, right? And which makes you think, well, why is that, right? These super awesome dogs. I'm kind of partial to golden retrievers. You obviously are too. And most of you guys on here probably are. But it doesn't seem, makes you wonder why, right? Some people ask, well, conventional treatment not just save my pet? Like, there's a whole bunch of big advances in veterinary medicine. And that was kind of the hope. But my experience in vet practice, and even now, wasn't really the same. Like, for instance, for dog, and there are a new bunch of emerging treatments. But for instance, even with lymphoma, they're saying if a dog has this type of cancer, maybe they're going to live 4 to 6 weeks. And yes, that can be extended. They can go into a remission with chemotherapy, but maybe living 9 months to a year, right? And for many of the cancers, you ideally want to take surgery. If you can remove that lump and do that surgically. But often, if you can't do that, you can't fully remove that mass, then really, you don't have very many options. And there are a bunch of newer ones coming out. There's different type of cancer vaccines, like things called immunotherapy, newer treatments being researched. But still, we've yet to say like, oh, this one thing is going to be the cure, right? And I wish, is that it is.
He's always got to be right next to me. He's so
awesome. Right. Okay. I don't know if he's enjoying the PowerPoint. And why is this happening, right? Like, what is the big reasons why? I wanted to start you talking about food, right? It started out as the whole thing with pet food is they would be butchering animals for people and stuff that they couldn't sell. They turned it into dog and cat food. They turned it into pet food. And things like that were considered unfit for human consumption, right? That we wouldn't eat, right? Disease and even potentially cancerous animal parts. And you'd hope that isn't happening today, but it still seems in some cases it is, right? Because you have some of the things in pet food, like certain toxins, chemical preservatives, right? Artificial colors, artificial flavors, right? When you look at first, kibble isn't normal, but when you start to see orange and purple kibble and different colors, you're like, that seems a bit unusual. Other things that has been thought of, when you process it, you put in high heat, that affects the food. You have different things in it. There might be antibiotics left over, certain fungal toxins. Some of the carbohydrates like corn, soy, etc. It's not just that they're genetically modified. It's that when a food is been modified genetically, it increases the number of insecticides and pesticides that is going to be in that food. Because what happens, it just allows the farmer, say if he's growing corn or soy, they can spray that with a chemical like Roundup. It's going to kill all the plants they don't want. So just the soy grows, but some of that residue stays in that food. And then much of that might be then used into dog food, which then our dogs are getting exposed to. There's the inside lining. Anytime you open a bag of dog food, you see a shiny inside line or coating. I don't know if you ever noticed that, Courtney, or maybe Eliza, when you fed Tula, right? It's all shiny. It's shiny because it's convenient. Stuff doesn't stick to it. But some of that might have Teflon chemicals, PFCs, and some of that can leach out into your dog's food. And you start to look at all.
It's a lot.
Yeah. I know. I've seen like the bare bad news, but when you start to look at all the different things in there, you're like,
It's things that people don't really think about either. Like you just buy a bag of dog food and think, oh, this is exactly, it says green on the front. You know, they like to greenwash stuff and make it seem all shiny and perfect. But if you really break it down.
Yes. Yeah, that's what. And honestly, even when I was in practice, the same thing. We were told this was good food. We recommend this to our clients. But when you start to really look into it and really read the label and you looked at the ingredients, you're like, this one company called the Clean Label Project, they looked at a number of different foods. And they just found a number of them had really high levels of certain things like heavy metals, some other pesticides. And these are some big heavy metals like cadmium, arsenic, and lead. And they found lots of the foods. They compared them to cigarettes, and some pet food had like almost 2,000% more arsenic, a pretty serious toxin, compared to cigarettes, which is like, how can that be? Because there isn't the same standards held up to pet food as there is to human food, right? So because of that, then they can use maybe less quality ingredients, and then some of that's making its way into our pets' food, right? And, other things, sorry, I think I cut part of my slide off here, but they're saying just for instance, without reading all the slide, just knowing when your dog walks around in the grass and someone has sprayed something on that grass, or maybe you've gone down to a soccer field or something where there is no dandelions, or maybe no dandelions for a reason, but they walk in that grass, some of that pesticide or insecticide gets on their paws. It's not just on their paws, but then they groom themselves after. They're cleaning their paws, ingesting some of it. Right.
Yeah, the boys like to go on safaris all the time, and every single house almost in our entire neighborhood has the sign in it that they've sprayed. And so I can just imagine if they're sniffing that they're ingesting all of that straight into their nostrils and straight into their system. So if our yard looks kind of funky this year,
right.
You know why? Because we're not using those chemicals, It's just better for them.
It is, you're right, it's so much better for them, right? And it's just, you sort of think like maybe just one time it's okay, but when you start, and I think part of it is when you start adding all that things together, all what's in their food, some of the other toxins and chemicals that are outside they get exposed to, then you start to see like, okay, I can kind of see how there's like why this is happening.
Yeah, it all
like also mentioned,
on top of each other.
Yeah, exactly. One goes on top of the other one. I mean, there's concerns about flea and tick medications, right? Some of them are working really well, especially it's huge, especially in the northeastern U.S., some parts of Canada now too, where there's a huge tick populations. But some of the new medications used to help prevent and treat those, like I don't need to name specific brands, but there's concerns about then their toxicity and our dogs absorbing some of that toxin, and how is that affecting them, and is that making them prone to cancer? Right? There's definitely some concerns about vaccines. Yes, vaccines definitely have a place in terms of keeping our dogs healthy and preventing infectious diseases, but they don't necessarily need these vaccines. For sure, they don't need them every year, and they don't need necessarily a whole host of vaccines every year. Right. So, which is another thought, right? It's around, yes, you want to do certain things to keep them healthy, but if you give too much of anything, right? That's another big concern. So those are just certain things to think about, maybe doing less of. And I think you might have talked about this, but there is now some new research, and it's actually, especially with the Goldens, they were just looking at early spay and neuter and their links to cancer. And then this one came from UC Davis, and they were actually looking at some of the golden retrievers in particular and the age of which they were spayed or neutered. And they found that if they're spayed or neutered early, there was a marked increased risk of certain types of cancer, including the two we just talked about, lymphoma, hemangiosarcoma in particular. So now the thought for a lot of these medium to large breed dogs is at least wait till 2 years of age, right? Till they've done some more mature growing, and it's a much more of a protective factor. And I never would have thought of this, right?
Cancer too. Like there's more to it than just it being, help to prevent cancer. I mean, that's when their growth plates close, and so they're getting all the hormones and stuff for their bones. Like you need that, and I mean, it can help prevent like ACL tears and all that sorts of stuff. It's just crazy how much is leaving nature alone benefits them.
Actually, you're right, but it's funny because we were just taught in vet school. You're just taught you like spay or neuter at 6 months of age with everybody or everything, and dogs and cats. And all we were taught is that if you spay the dogs before 6 months of age, there's a marked decreased chance you're never going to get something like mammary gland or breast cancer, which is what we're taught. But we weren't taught about maybe there's downsides to doing early spay or neuter. Right. And finally, a whole bunch of people have studied it and said, yeah, there is, right, which makes sense.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of a live and learn type of deal. Unfortunately, I feel like a lot of vets were like, this is what we're supposed to do. And then now they're seeing Dr. Karen Becker, just name dropping her, one of the vets that had talked about it was years later that she realized that all these dogs are coming to her with problems. And they're like, why is this happening? And early spay and neuter was one of the reasons.
Yeah. And it's just, but that's what we're taught to do, early spay and neuter. That doesn't mean it's right. So is now a good time we must have some questions in there, moderator, that you can ask.
Yes, we do. There's been plenty of questions. Lots of people are asking about Tucker. But
Tucker, come here. We need a Tucker appearance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I got Todd. Hold on. Up there's Todd.
Oh my gosh, so cute.
You say hello.
Wow. He looks right into the camera. He's good.
Wow.
Okay.
That's very impressive.
Can you take it, Tucker? That's okay. Off. Now I gotta get the touch. Come here. Don't be a hawk, crazy. Come here. There's the touch. Oh, look at the sunlight on you. Can you say hello?
Oh, that's beautiful.
And Tucker's in the sun. Hey.
What do you say?
Good boy.
Who's talking to you, Todd? There we go.
Good boy.
Boy. Yeah, my little box can't fit both of them, can it? No.
Nice. Okay, and then what do they get for treats, Linda? What do you give?
I give them beef liver treats. Just
Yummy.
Great beef liver. I try not to give them too many from that one video you were talking about.
Right. So you do it in moderation. It's good. It's super nutrient dense. Exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes I'll do like freeze dried chicken breast, or I'll just dehydrate chicken on my own. Like I bought one of those dehydrators.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'll just dehydrate some. Sometimes I'll just dehydrate their food too.
So those are great. Those are awesome treats, right? Because it's single ingredient and they're real things that you can see. And yeah.
I know that they're not going to react to any of the ingredients. And it's so funny because when people will try to give them treats, they're kind of bougie because they develop their own palate. They will spit out other treats. And it's so funny because I always feel guilty turning down like milk bones, because people are just trying to be nice. And they're like, can your dog have a treat? They'll give it to, and I'll let them because I know they're going to spit it out.
Yeah, because it's like, it's not good.
I'm like, yeah, sure. And they're like, it's not good. It's good for you, right?
Yeah, where's my liver? And it's so much better. See, they're good. Nice.
Yeah.
So are there some questions there?
Yes.
Moderator?
Yes. Right. One question I've actually seen a few different times is just pretty general. And someone was asking almost just like, why has cancer become so common?
I think of all those different reasons we're just talking about, all the combination of like what we've been feeding our dogs, some of the many toxins we've been exposing them to. Then you add in like some of the things we've been doing veterinary wise, as far as like, for instance, even just early spay and neuter. Like you do that for 40 years and find out that, or then that increases risk, and you expose them to a whole bunch of repeated vaccines, right? Over and over again. You repeatedly stimulate their immune system and add other things in there and make it difficult for their body to deal with. Or, we introduce new ways to kill fleas and ticks, which are pretty effective, but then we expose them to those toxins. And it's not necessarily one thing, it's a whole bunch of things that are added in. Right. And
I think people don't realize that if you really think about it, even from just a common sense perspective, I mean, you're giving your dog something that's supposed to kill the fleas and ticks, but it doesn't prevent the tick from jumping on them. It just kills them once they start to eat the blood. So it makes your dog's blood literally poison to the tick. So it's like, if it's poison to the tick, then what is it doing to the dog? And I think that's just common sense. If you really think about it, it can't be good,
Yeah. And especially doing it month after month is the thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a lot.
So yes. Yeah. So that's where we talk about too, is a bunch of things you can do to potentially help decrease that. And there's some other questions in there, moderator.
You're going to keep calling me moderator?
Yeah.
Yes. There's quite a few. Exactly. Should have put that. Quite a few people have been asking about what to feed their dog. So one person was asking about freeze-dried raw food, and is that good to feed your dog?
Is freeze-dried raw? It is. For some dogs, that can be really good, right? There's definitely differing beliefs around nutrition. I'm not sure, Courtney, what you guys feed. Or what
we feed raw. So I did freeze-dried raw in the beginning, but I found that it was just really dry, obviously. And it's extremely expensive. So I feel like freeze-dried raw is actually more expensive than just doing regular raw. And I feel like you lose a little bit of nutrients with freeze-dried raw personally. So I just stuck to the normal. Thank you. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Talking about food, he gets all burpy.
It's like, give me more.
Well, that was
and lots. Sorry, go ahead. Moderator.
On to the question then. Someone else was asking just for both of your opinions just on raw food and a raw diet.
So my experience, even in practice, was that some dogs did. First of all, I never heard about raw. We were taught like raw bad, that the best thing to feed is this like brand name kibble, and soon after the fact that's not the case. And I found like there's a certain percent of dogs do really well on raw food, like not every dog, but some do really well, and they're definitely much healthier. And I would see for a lot of them, they would just be in the clinic less often, right? So they have less GI problems. They had definitely better dental health, and they just seemed generally healthier. I thought there was less percent of those dogs had allergies. That was my general thought, but doesn't agree with every dog. And there is a bit of work you need to do, make sure it's balanced, and right, you're also making sure you don't generally get any pathogens from preparing it. But honestly, I think of all those years, I don't think I saw one dog that was actually sick from contaminated raw food. Mm-hmm. So if you choose to feed, I think it's very safe and potentially really beneficial. But it doesn't agree with every dog. I'm not the best example because we still feed some kibble to Tula. But I like the idea of, giving some variety in food. And I think I'll have some slides in here of some of my suggestions.
Yeah. I think what a lot of people don't realize is, I mean, like you said, not every dog does good on raw. Like some do better with gently cooked, and there could be reasons why, but raw dog food, when it's like Viva Raw, for instance, their raw meat is actually safer for us to humanly touch than the raw meat that they have at the grocery store, because they have to go through so many different regulatory things in order to prepare it. And they're under such a microscope. So when people are like, aren't you afraid of getting sick? And I'm like, no, actually, I mean, I make myself like chicken and stuff like that, but the dogs are actually safer for me to touch because of that. So yeah, they like their raw for sure.
Yeah. And our critters in our house seem to like raw food too. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Are we got time for one more question?
Yeah. Someone was asking if rice or all starches can make cancer grow faster.
Can they? So the thought is carbohydrates can be fine, especially if you're using the right carbohydrate and depending what you're mixing in with your dog's food. And a lot of the raw foods are going to also have, like maybe the prepackaged frozen raw might have a carbohydrate in it. But once your dog has a cancer of some type, then the canine cancer diets really are low in carbohydrates. So they would have there wouldn't be much in the way of rice, if no rice at all. Generally, those cancer diets are then something where it's minimal simple sugars. There would be a high protein source, a relatively high fat source, and minimal to no carbohydrates. So yeah, that's generally true. And any dog that's to have cancer, it's better if they're on a primary keto type diet.
Okay. I'll just keep trying to write down people's questions as we go, and you guys can continue.
I'll keep going here. I'm going to talk about some of the
questions are going to be answered in the next slides too. So people, if your questions are not being answered, it's probably because he's probably going to answer them in the next slides.
Right. Yes. I hope in some of the slides, yes. Preventive supplements for immune support. So I just wanted to highlight some of the simple ones that are also potentially inexpensive for you guys to consider doing. And using one was essential fatty acids, being in the form of fish oil or krill oil. Even ground flax, if it has some available EFAs, it could be really beneficial for our dogs. So in one of the studies, they found just low levels of essential fatty acids in mammary tissue. If they don't have high enough levels, it increases the chances of serious types of cancer. But if you have high enough levels of the EFAs, it really lowers the risk. And there's been hundreds, if not thousands, of studies done with these essential fatty acids. So they're called essential fatty acids because we need them, and your dog needs these types of fatty acids. But they come from either fish and or a fish oil. They come salmon, for instance, probably the biggest one. They can come from little small critters that swim in the ocean called krill, such as krill oil, and you can get not as much of the essential fatty acids. It's not as bioavailable, but you can also get these from flax oil as kind of the three biggest one. And ground flaxseed is going to have a moderate amount of these EFAs. But just so many different studies. One with, as seen, say, for instance, with people in colon cancer, this marked decreased risk just being on EFAs. Mm-hmm. And what they found is, in general, and even the retrospective studies have been done with dogs, is that if you have higher levels of these EFAs, period, you're going to see lower rates of cancer. So it's not, and you guys can get really inexpensive essential fatty acids. They don't, of all the different things you want to add into your dog's diet. And some people have asked, like, what if I don't want to go buy a supplement? Is there one like way you can add an EFA? Even something like olive oil, right? We all love olive oil. You don't need very much. And adding that into your dog's food can make a big, and it's also great as an anti-inflammatory for dogs that have arthritis. It's also great to help decrease potentially itching in combination with other things for dogs that have allergies, as an example. But the EFA is long-term, just a great, and I give some to my dog Tula, I give some to our cat, and I take some. We all take the same thing at the same time. Yep. Antioxidant. And Courtney, are your guys on EFAs at all?
Oh yeah. Yep. And okay. I changed up. I don't always give them the same brand either because I like to do a variety of different things. So sometimes I'll do olive oil and sometimes I'll do fish oil, coconut oil, MCT oil, all sorts of different things. And
yeah, and that's a good idea.
Or anchovies in there, you know, that kind of thing.
Yes, like sardines and oil. That's a great idea. Even. Mm-hmm. And it's a good idea what you just said to mix up the brand, because years ago, about 15 years ago, there was this big pet food recall, and part of the issue is that you just feed one certain brand of dog food or one brand of anything. Like sometimes stuff can happen. Either is they get a wrong ingredient that hasn't been screened for a toxin that makes its way into your dog's food. And so if you just stick with the same brand all the time, I'm kind of that opinion too. I even try with Tula every 3 or 4 months, like it's a slightly different brand or type of food. So if you're not eating the same thing all the time. Mm-hmm. I want to mention this antioxidant. So these are these little really beneficial plant nutrients, not only mostly plant nutrients.
Tucker hates this part. He does not like this part.
But the interesting thing with this, so I wanted to mention they're called they're found in fruits and vegetables, like the red of your apple peel or the orange of the carrot, for instance. Mm-hmm. And this one study of Scottish Terriers, which is their breed, has got the highest incidence of all dog breeds that get bladder cancer. But they found those guys that had carrots 3 times a week had a marked decreased risk of getting bladder cancer. And they just think it's because it's the antioxidants that were in the carrots, which is like, So that's another easy way. If your dog, it's like maybe Tucker and Todd aren't fond of apples or berries or carrots. So
chopped up real small, but there are fruits and stuff in their food. That's, they balance around so they kind of can't tell it's there, but I try to give them anything healthy. They're like, unless it's meat.
But it's mixing because meat tastes so much better. And they, our moderator, Eliza, can attest to that. That seems to be her favorite food item.
What, sorry?
Meat, Eliza, would you not agree? Yeah, between a carrot and a hamburger, you might pick the hamburger.
I think I would pick the hamburger.
Yeah. So we have to do the same thing with Eliza. Like, chop those vegetables really small and hide them in protein.
To eat them.
But it can make a huge.
Broccoli is like the number one thing he can't stand. Everyone knows the tree of doom, Tucker calls it. He was
that's awesome.
But sometimes I'll steam it, or I'll give him microgreens. Like that's one way that I love to get antioxidants into his food is I'll sprinkle some microgreens on top, and because they're so small, they mix in really well with his diet. So he eats those. But
okay, those are good. But whatever you guys can, and it may only need to be do it 3 times a week, can make a big difference. I should try this, but our own dog is not fond. She won't eat any of those.
Oh,
she won't eat apples and she won't eat carrots. And
even blended up and then frozen with some yogurt or something, like a little popsicle.
Oh, that's usually a good idea. Okay, you try that. Your next thing.
Got a counter.
Wanted to mention curcumin, and so it's the active ingredient found in turmeric, and it's got tons and tons of studies because it's such a great anti-inflammatory and has been linked to being beneficial for lots of different types of cancers. And they just, likewise too, they know that in populations where they consume just a small amount of curcumin daily, they have just much lower rates of some types of cancers, right? So knowing that it could potentially be protective, because it's one thing to treat cancer, but if you can prevent it, maybe add, even one or two things in there that have been linked to helping decrease the chance, right? So maybe the essential fatty acids. Maybe if you have a dog that's okay with the idea of eating curcumin. But
yeah, I saw a few people asking about turmeric in the chat.
Yeah.
So this is where this applies.
Oh, did you?
It's very potent.
Yes. But definitely. I mean, there's one called the golden paste, which is, I've got a couple videos on it, which involves quite a lot of turmeric and a few other ingredients in it. I think it might have been coconut oil, turmeric, a bunch of other, but primarily turmeric was and it's the curcumin that's in the turmeric, which is really beneficial. As one other option, right? And maybe it's just 3 times a week. But that can make a big difference. Some of the good bacteria, the probiotics. So these are all those little microbes that inhabit most of your dog's intestinal tract. And I think 70-80% of their immune system is based there. But we know that it's not just that they are responsible for good gut health. They're linked to a whole bunch of different really big health benefits for our dogs. One being a much more robust immune system. And they have higher levels of certain kind of antibodies, making it not just their immune system more effective, but then potentially being immune system then can respond better if cancer cells pop up, right? So maybe it's as simple as giving your dog, you can get special veterinary probiotics, we have such things, but it might be as simple as just adding in yogurt. Because you said these guys like yogurt.
Yeah, yep. And they like their goat's milk and kefir.
Okay, so they're getting lots of probiotics. Okay.
Yeah,
it's good.
A good variety too. And I think it's important to have variety. But they also get, am I allowed to mention specific brands or should I?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So Adored Beast, that was the one that we really, really love for probiotics. They have prebiotics and probiotics. But like, especially if you give your dog an antibiotic, if you have to give your dog an antibiotic and then you got to rebuild their gut health, they have one that's specifically for that. And it's done wonders for Tucker and Todd.
Nice. And that is in particular in practice was like anytime we scripted out antibiotics was always suggesting after the fact, well, first of all, maybe using less antibiotics was the first one, which takes a while to get there because lots of conditions don't need antibiotics and there's a bunch of natural products you can consider. But secondarily, if you do, then making sure you add in a good probiotic after the fact. Never mind helping their immune system.
People are like, Todd. Yes, this is Todd.
Yeah, look at him.
They're begging to go outside because he wants to go swimming. So if you're wondering where he's at, that's why.
Aw. This one is colostrum. It's considered, it's the mother's first milk. And we used to think of it just, it's been around for a long period of time. And I mean, I think I learned about it when I was even in veterinary college, and they're like, oh, maybe it'll help your dog or maybe help the occasional cat with their immune system. But now there's been much more interest in studying it. And they're saying it's got a whole array of different anti-cancer properties within colostrum that potentially could be really beneficial. So they're really looking at it for cancer prevention and or in some cases treatment. And it's really safe for our dogs. I mean, I've got a suggested dose. They're 100 milligrams per 10 pounds of body weight daily. But it's of all those different things, and it's nice to think and if one of you guys are looking at like what else can I add or not, just think of some of these slides and think of some things that maybe you've got a dog that's prone to a type of cancer, and colostrum might be a good like supplement maybe to give 3 or 4 times a week. Or maybe it's
love it too. They love the taste of it. We get ours from Raw Feeding Miami. And they come in the big containers and you just pour it in their food and they love it.
Oh, it's the liquid. Oh, that's a great. You have 2 healthy Goldens. Yeah.
They're a little spoiled. A little bit spoiled.
Nice. Thanks. And then food. So we're actually doing pretty well, you guys, for slides here. So we definitely have time for some more questions. You want to give us some more questions, moderator Eliza?
Yeah. Okay. Just bringing it back a bit when you guys were talking about carrots. Someone was asking if carrots made in a crock pot are as good as raw carrots, like nutrient-wise. That makes a difference.
Yeah. The one I didn't read it. I haven't seen any difference whether it affects the nutrient value. I think in general, it's you don't want to overcook it, like mildly, like if you can blanch it or something. But I haven't seen one to say like whether you slightly blanch it or cook it versus just raw.
Okay.
But I think what I do know is for dogs that are okay with eating raw carrots, it is also great for their teeth, right? It's such a nice, good, crunchy thing. And some of the dogs that like carrots, it was great because I would really see a difference in their dental health.
Okay. Another one is someone was asking, Courtney, do you add any mushroom supplements for your dogs?
I do. I add quite a few, actually. I love turkey tail mushroom, reishi. I have to look in my thing because I have one that's like specifically for immune support, and it's several different mushrooms. But sometimes I'll just have shiitake mushrooms from the grocery store, and I'll add those. Or I'll even make like homemade bone broth and add the shiitake mushrooms into that. So yeah, I just try to change it up. But I feel like turkey tail mushroom is like one of the top ones. That and I mean,
It is.
Yeah, especially for cancer. I think hemangiosarcoma is like the one that they always say turkey tail mushroom. But yeah, I definitely add mushrooms, and I try to change. Like I said, everything I try to change it up so they're not just getting the same thing all the time. But I feel like that's super important to add.
So do you give it how often? So you'll give them some mushroom like 1 week, and then they don't get any the next, or you?
Yeah, I would say about 3 to 4 days out of the week I give it to them. You know,
Nice.
I should be probably more consistent with it, but you know, I do my best.
Yeah, but no one knows because no one knows for sure, especially Preventive, like what's the best thing to give. And it's just like dogs are individuals, so just like people, right? So some works well for us and some doesn't. And same thing with their dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good idea where it's a bit of a mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was actually someone else's question is like how about turkey tail mushrooms as a preventative measure for cancer?
Yeah. That's their question. And then we actually have a slide. How about that? We actually have a slide. I have one later on. I think turkey tail's coming up.
Okay, we'll just move past that. And also just for everyone who is watching, I am trying to keep some questions that I think will have a longer answer for the end. So I'm just trying to go for some shorter questions. So just for another one for you, Courtney, is someone was asking if Tucker and Todd's raw diet includes bones, meat, and organ meat.
Absolutely. Yep. I think that's important too to mention because a lot of people be like, oh, I'll stick my dog on raw, and they start chopping up a chicken breast and then give it to them in a bowl. And your dog needs the bone, the organ, and even more to balance it. Like, I mean, you can get away with some raw brands that just only have the meat, the muscle meat, the bone, and the organ. But even then, it's not technically balanced because out in the wild, they're eating the whole animal. They got the fur, which is actually good for fiber and all that stuff. But yeah, it definitely has that in there.
They eat everything in the wild. Exactly. Yep. So then usually how often are you giving the organ meat?
Oh, every day with their food. Okay. Because Viva Raw has it completely balanced already. This is not an ad, by the way. And a lot of people actually ask me, like, why? Because we used to feed another brand of raw food. And even in the way that certain raw foods are prepared, like HPP, I'm sure you have your opinions on like HPP and processing and stuff like that. But we noticed that Tucker did better on raw food that wasn't high pressure pasteurized. He started getting yeast issues with HPP raw food. But then as soon as we changed, he was great again. So it goes back to trying to find what's best for your dog, but also making sure it's balanced for them.
Yeah. And then it's the more you process it, right? So even just doing that under high pressure is you're gonna alter the what's available in the food.
Yeah. Right. And then they were adding synthetic vitamins to kind of balance what is lost from using the HPP. And I think also he was reacting to that and having like allergies. So I'm like, well, I can't, I have to do what I have to do. I have to switch. And it worked out better for him.
Nice.
Yeah. That is someone's question as well as what brand you feed Tucker and Todd.
Yep. Viva Raw Pets, it's called.
Perfect. Nice. Okay. Do you guys want to keep going with the slides for now? And I'll just.
Sure. I'll get some pet food and cancer. The importance of diet for prevention and treatment.
Perfect.
So the first one was just which we talked about earlier, right? You're looking at all these underlying causes So then it's like, okay, why not? Knowing that it would make sense to feed something that is minimally processed, not exposed to extreme heat, just Courtney was talking about with even the raw food. Ones that are naturally preserved, avoiding toxins like cadmium as much as etc. And some of these excessive carbohydrates, including corn, soy, and beet pulp, which might include GMO foods. And it's not that they're genetically modified; it's as bad as it is all the things they can spray on them. So part of it, like you're trying to form how to feed your dogs, it's, well, what are some of the more common causes of cancer, and then avoid those. So by doing that, I know I still have a slide for cats here, but ideally I'm saying you're avoiding kibble, right? Where it's homemade or it's raw, right? You're not knowing it, because there's no such thing. You're not going to find a natural kibble in the wild. Like there's not dog kibble or outside living in our forest next to us. It's manufactured and processed in lots of different ways. And I always say it's the equivalent of walking in a grocery store. And if you just stick to the center aisles as you walk up and down, where there's cans and stuff is in bags, it's going to last for years. And you stayed away from the outside aisles, you stay away from the fruits and vegetables, and you stay away from the meat, etc., that's in the fridge, and then you're going to be pretty darn unhealthy. And yet we do that with our dogs. We just buy a bag of food and that's all they ever eat. And then we see this high number of dogs getting sick. So that makes sense to me.
For sure, because people get, it's not to shame anybody that feeds kibble, because obviously kibble is way cheaper than feeding raw. It's very difficult to feed raw. It's very expensive. But I always tell people that if you can't feed raw, even just adding 2-3 meals a week, or even if just 1 meal a week of raw, I feel like can make a huge difference in your dog's nutrient profile and what they're getting.
And that's a great point. So I think I might even have, it's funny because we're saying the same things, and you don't even know what the slides are, Courtney. So if you're choosing to feed kibble, right, fine, make sure it's as close to natural as it can be, but one that's like a good quality brand, right? The one I feed Tula is called Icana, which is, they're actually started as a Canadian company, and obviously they're much more expensive, but I'm trying to not to make the only thing she gets. But then adding in some other things, like you're varying the food, right? So you don't be in the same food every 2-3 months. I would switch it up. And even of the kibble that they were on, and then doing this variety is a really good idea for lots of different reasons. But that being said, because there's not just one good food and it's going to stay with your dog forever. Some people are stuck. Your dog might have a certain health condition. Maybe you have a Dalmatian that gets a type of bladder stone. They get these things called urate bladder stones, and they might need to be on a very specific special diet. But for most dogs, that's not the case, and you really can offer variety. Along with, like Courtney just said, you're feeding some raw, considering making some of your dog's food at home, right? A moderate amount of canned along with that dry food. And they're adding, and I think I took out some of the slides, but there's certain things, and along with adding in certain things like the yogurt or maybe the vegetables or other things into that food to increase the food value, right? And to increase some of the positive ingredients we know that might offer like cancer preventive properties, even adding in the olive oil, for instance.
Something I like to do is take a bunch of, I'll do parsley, celery, kale, spinach, and I like to lightly steam it and then blend it up in a blender and then put it in little molds, like little popsicle molds. You can get the ones that look like paws or bones or whatever, and you can add those to your dog's food. And surprisingly, the boys will eat those. They won't eat straight up raw broccoli, but when I do it that way, and you can mix that with bone broth as well, because bone broth is super good for
it's great,
and their digestive stuff, and joint support because it has what's it called? Collagen. Yeah. So
it's great. It is.
Really do whatever, and then you can put your carrots in there, But we like to do that.
I'm gonna try that with you. Grinding up the tree of doom, as you call it. Mm-hmm. And I was right. No, the whole thing with carbohydrates or not is yes. And I think I wanted to reinforce the point here that not all carbs are bad. Like there are lots of dogs that are eating carbohydrates that are pretty darn healthy, but being really critical of the source of the carbohydrates, such as the ones that soy or corn, such as the GMO ones, which can be heavily sprayed. And, even things like carrots are also considered, yes, they're a veggie, but also pretty high carbohydrate content. But they have good things in them, such as those antioxidants we talked about earlier. So you're not just looking at no carbs or carbs. You're looking at what type of carbohydrate is that, where is it from, and could this contribute to my dog's health or not? And I might not have a slide on cancer prevent. Did want to mention, but if your dog ever is to have cancer, there's a number of different specific dog cancer diets. But really, the basis of those those diets, if they ever have cancer, is high protein, quite high fat, and no carbohydrates, because that's when you want them to have no carbs if they're dealing with some type of cancer, because glucose is the energy source. Cancer cells. Need to go. Somebody wants to go outside.
Todd brought me a ball.
That's awesome.
What do you want? You want to play ball? Okay, go get it. Exercise is great for helping your dog to be healthy.
Exercise is great.
Clearly doesn't get enough.
Foundation of mental health and good dog health.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the other ones, which I think you're probably using that we talked about, just simple things you could add to your dog's diet that might make a big difference with them, right? Potentially preventing some of this serious disease, such as cancer, right? Improving the quality, lean ground meat like chicken, some of the organ meats like liver is really high in this one antioxidant, really nutritious nutrient called coenzyme Q10. Amongst many other things, like liver is really nutrient dense. It does have a lot of positive nutrients, so it is a great treat, just not too much. Yogurt we talked about, eggs is great protein source, cottage cheese, right? Some of the veggies we talked about, even yams, and then some of the fruits like blueberries I mentioned there, or maybe apples. So all those things, those are people food, but they can be given to your dog and really, in my opinion, can make a big difference, improving the quality of their diet, making it more of a disease-fighting diet versus just kind of a maintenance thing. And I think like a lot of what you're doing, Courtney, is those are all big things that are adding like a positive. There's all these positive nutrients that are going to make it much less likely that Tucker Todd are going to get sick because of being on that.
I always think of it like a bucket. Like their body is kind of like a bucket, and you want to add the good things in instead of adding garbage in, carbohydrates, things that will fuel them and set their body up for success.
Right?
Yeah.
So we just have to work on our moderator Eliza here, because she likes to start the day with a bagel.
Oh no, straight up carbs. I mean, I do too, but it's not good for me. The thing is our dogs eat healthier than us sometimes.
Yeah.
Because by the time you're done making their food, you're like, well, I'm exhausted. Let's just have a bagel.
Exactly. I mean, the best way to fix that is by having like a bagel with some sort of protein, like peanut butter, or have some sort of meat protein with it. But I love just a bagel with some cream cheese.
I love bread. Even the dogs try to get to my stuff when I'm having that, but they don't get any of it.
A bagel and a little bit of kale, Eliza. Okay.
Yum.
That's not
yum. Okay. So we talked, I think we're not very many slides left. Do we have more questions in there you want to?
Yeah.
Comments? Questions?
Absolutely. There's lots of comments and lots of questions. Let's see here.
I did see some comments of people talking about vaccines and stuff. I don't know if you want to talk more about that or not.
Sure.
Because I mean, I feel like a lot of people, that's one topic that I personally want to talk about with my audience. But I felt it's not my place because I'm not a veterinarian. So I didn't want to have the people coming for me because there's, it's a necessity, but to what extent and what can we do instead? I feel like would be useful.
So for me, there's a few big, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different dog diseases, but there's a couple of big preventive ones like distemper virus, parvovirus, rabies are kind of the big three core preventable infectious diseases. And if we were to get another puppy again, and my sort of vaccine schedule I would vaccinate my puppy at 8 weeks with distemper and parvo. I'd vaccinate him at 12 weeks with distemper and parvo. I'd wait till he was 6 months of age before I was to give a rabies vaccine. And then probably a year after that, then I would titer test to see what level of protective antibodies he had. And I probably wouldn't do any additional vaccines. Like I would do a really minimal core vaccine program. There's been rising cases of leptospirosis in some areas. I probably wouldn't do that because it's got a really high incidence of side effects. There's Lyme disease vaccine, but there's issues around that vaccine isn't developed for people yet we've been giving it to dogs for 10 years. I'm not convinced of its safety and how well it works. My thought is like a minimal core vaccines, titer testing, and adding in some of these immune supportive products that we've just been talking about to help prevent serious disease, period. I mean, that's the point of the vaccine, is how do we prevent serious diseases? So we make sure they might be on like a good probiotic supplement.
Like they're on additional saying that they can't even get grooming done unless they're fully vaccinated. But the thing is, I think a lot of people don't realize is with titer testing, you get that done and they're technically fully vaccinated when you can see they're there. Because a lot of these vaccines can last 5 to 10 years and sometimes the full lifespan of a dog.
Yes, at least 10 years. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the Rabies Challenge Fund, they looked at and they found minimal 5 years post-rabies vaccine, if not longer. I know in veterinary school, we had to be vaccinated for rabies. And like 10 years later, I still had high levels of antibodies against rabies. Right. So they know these vaccines last much longer in people, but there wasn't a whole lot of research done with dogs in particular to say the vaccine companies developed the vaccine protocols and said this is what you give every year, and it just became a really good way initially it was used as a way in veterinary practice to get clients to come back into the clinic. We sent out these vaccine reminders in the mail and people would come in. And now, I mean, everything has changed, especially in the last 10 or 15 years, where there is more modified vaccine protocols. Most then are now gone to every 3 years, but still some people are saying coming in yearly. Things like kennel cough vaccine, you're going to need to get that every year. If maybe your dog is in a kennel exposed to lots of dogs, if you do give it where it's called intranasally, is a lot less invasive than, giving it via an injection for sure. But I honestly think a lot of those other vaccines, and I used to give them because that's what we were taught to do in veterinary practice, and we give the boosters and then we give them yearly. I really think that's just way too many vaccines.
Because when you're given a vaccine, isn't it? It's making have an immune response.
100%. Like that's it. It's stimulating the immune system. It's got to recognize it as foreign, and then it produces these antibodies in case that virus ever affects your dog, and you can quickly mount that immune response.
Yeah.
I think you repeated.
I want to know about that because it's like I am the same as you. I believe that a certain amount is important, but then after that, giving them it just doesn't make sense. If they're already have antibodies, why give it every single year if it's actually going to do more harm than good in the end? If they're already, going to be okay if they are exposed to that to begin with. So I think that's huge in the pet health world. That's something that really needs to be talked about.
I fully agree. And one of the interesting things too is when I was in veterinary practice, which I often notice is that some of the colleagues I would work with, so these are other veterinarians, they would be a little bit cautious about revaccinating their own animals. Which like, because we would see vaccine side effects, or you would see, right? And that's what you get to see in the clinic, right? You're often seeing animals that are sick already. So I thought, well, if we're being cautious about vaccinating our own animals, shouldn't we then be spreading that, letting clients know, and maybe well, there are certain potential risks here. So being aware of it, but ultimately it's your choice about whether, I mean, the veterinarian can't make you get a vaccine, right? It's definitely your choice of vaccinating your dog or not. But definitely as puppies, like all the really serious infectious diseases we would see would be at a year of age of 1 and under.
Right, like parvo.
Exactly, parvovirus, right? That was, and we did see some cases of distemper virus. Fortunately, I've never seen a case of rabies. Not that I ever want to. But yeah, you want to make sure as your puppy's protected, right? Your dog can get to a year of age. And then once past a year of age, it's a big difference.
So, yeah. Thank you for going more into that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And it's good. Lots of questions about that.
Before you move on, I've actually been seeing a lot of questions about the rabies vaccine.
Yes.
And some people are just like mentioning that wherever they live, like the rabies vaccine is required every 3 years.
Yeah.
And the other thing is someone was asking if your dog currently has its rabies vaccine, but it gets bit by a rabid animal or an animal that might be rabid, do they need to get another one immediately after, or should they be fine?
So first of all, someone's going to determine if it's got rabies or not, and they might even then do post-rabies treatment. But in general, that's the point of the vaccine. You should be fully protected, right? If you're ever bit by a rabid animal. And you're right, with lots of states, and even here for us to go from Canada into the US, your dog had to be current with rabies, and it has to be within a 3-year window. So it is every 3 years too.
Okay.
And you're right. In some areas it's just mandated.
Yeah.
But
isn't the 3-year rabies vaccine literally identical to the 1-year vaccine?
Yes, it is.
So they offer it and say, well, this one is better for longer, but it's literally the exact same thing
yes, it is.
as the 1-year rabies vaccine.
Yeah.
So why do they do that? I don't understand.
Because some people originally were taught that vaccine is only going to give them strong protection for a year. And so then they just stick with that, right? Where now we're pretty clear that it's definitely much longer than
3 years.
3 years, probably it's just a minimal 5 years, if not 10, right?
Wow. That's wild. Yeah, I feel like rabies is the one it's hard to get a vet to do teeter testing on that one.
That they won't do because you're not allowed to, really. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's legal. Like in Michigan, legally, you have to have proof of it.
Yeah, you do anything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but minimal, like as best you can, right? Just being really cautious with those vaccines.
Yeah.
And minimal vaccines for sure. And then all those different immune supportive supplements we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. We're ready for some more slides, and then we'll get to some more questions.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting near the end. Some of the alternative treatments. So I'm just going to talk about some of the things that have been used for some of our dogs if they have cancer. One was dandelion root. So just plain old dandelions all throughout North America, all over Canada, the US, and everywhere else. That's what I have a really healthy population of dandelions growing in our yard, as you can attest to, Eliza. And we used to be so worried, and we dig them out. I had no idea they're beneficial. But there's been lots of, so there's a university called the University of Windsor. So this is in Southern Ontario. It's probably near where you live, Courtney, just north of Michigan. And they have an alternative research part of the university. And it's interesting because I talked to one of the researchers. So they were isolating a number of different nutrients within dandelion root that have like really good anti-carcinogenic properties. And in part because they, as part of the attached to the alternative treatment area in the University of Windsor, they actually had conventional chemotherapy where people coming in that have different types of cancers. And one person in particular had an end stage type of lymphoma, some type of blood cancer, was told chemo's not working, and she said, "That's okay. I'm gonna treat myself with dandelion root tea." I'm like, "Sure you are." 3 months later, she comes back for a recheck, and she's cancer free.
Wow.
And then while she's in the waiting room, she tells someone else. So they like, "I'm gonna make this dandelion root." And they had a similar experience. I'm like, okay, we've got to research this. So, and there are, and it's not that it's a new thing. I mean, many people have talked about it, but now they're seriously studying it. And I know when I talked to one of the researchers, he said, I mean, they're really trying to isolate the specific parts of the root. But they said what some people were doing, they were just drying the root, grinding it up in a coffee grinder. So it was small little chunks. And they would simmer it on, put in 1 tablespoon of this dandelion root, add 1 cup of water, simmer for 15 or 20 minutes. And that's what they would take for about a 40 or 50 pound dog.
Wow.
And they would give that throughout the day. And he was saying when some people were seeing results with some of the cancers, it took about 2 weeks, and they would see a positive result on. I haven't heard many people have seen it yet, but there are. The big thing with dandelion root is it's available all over the place. It's very inexpensive, and it's sort of one good option if your dog has a serious cancer and you have very limited other options, because so many of these cancers, like we just, as you know, we don't have many great alternative conventional options yet.
Mm-hmm.
Melatonin is this sleep hormone, which who would ever think melatonin could be good for cancer? We're finding out it does so much more than just moderating sleep. It has a big effect on hair growth, and it's a very potent antioxidant, because we know that's a big way of how cancer cells ultimately might form, because your cells break down. When they break down, they release these things called free radicals that damage other cells that can potentially trigger abnormal cell growth. But melatonin is doing something else. So it seems to work in conjunction and be really beneficial for lots of the hormonal type cancers, like say mammary gland cancer, for instance. And what they're saying, it works really well in conventional and with many of the other conventional treatments. And there's been lots of research going right now with people and with animals and the use of melatonin. And they're saying it can virtually do no harm, may be really helpful, maybe even be preventive in some cases. They're talking about suggesting it for some animals. But as far as melatonin, you could see I've got some suggested doses. And one aside, if you wanted to get a natural form of melatonin, they say it's highest of all the different foods out there, it's really high in kiwi.
Mm.
So if you have a dog that likes kiwi, yeah.
Maybe I should take kiwi in the morning with my breakfast to make me more tired.
At night, right before bed, about an hour or so before bed.
I wonder after breakfast, I'm like, why am I so tired? No, I'm kidding.
Because that's when you have it.
I'll have like eggs and some sausage, and I'll have a fruit, and I love kiwi. So that's crazy. Yeah. I did not know melatonin was in kiwi. It's cool.
Yeah, this is really high. All the fun things I learned. Turkey tail we're just talking about. Mm-hmm. Like it's of all those different medicinal mushrooms, definitely by far it's got the best research. And I was saying in Japan, it's listed as a medicine, as one of their core treatments for some of the cancer, especially colon cancer. Really well used in our dogs, super darn safe. I mean, I've gone into the woods near where we live and seen turkey tail.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, it's the neatest thing it's virtually super safe, limited no side effects. It works really well in conjunction even with the chemotherapy drugs. Mm-hmm. And you know, I've got a suggested dose there if an animal is to have any type of cancer. And I like the idea. There is those, like, I think what you're using, Courtney, some of these mushroom combinations. We've got turkey tail, you have reishi, you probably have chaga, you might, yes. I'm not sure, right? And there's some of the other different medicinal mushrooms out there. But yeah, they've got, especially when we're dealing with the immune system and potentially cancer prevention and or treatment, great options. And the other thing which I like with lots of these alternative remedies is that there is virtually no side effects, right? And that's the thing. And they're not. It's not like a magic bullet where you just give this one thing and you're going to kill that cancer, but you're going to maybe target different parts of how cancer cells grow, because cancer is really complex. There's one type of cancer, and every type of cancer, even specific types of cancer, like prostate cancer, for instance, they all work slightly differently. So that's why there isn't just one thing that's going to sort of stop that cancer.
Just doing all of these things is what helps to decrease it in the body. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Yeah, for sure.
Everyone's looking for a magical cure, but it doesn't exist. It's
no
the whole thing as a whole and whole environment. We got to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. This is one. This is. I want to mention this.
Sorry, just before you move on from the turkey tail mushroom,
Yes.
I've just seen some comments of people asking if you know where they can buy it, and also if different parts of the turkey tail make a difference.
I'm not sure the different parts. Where you buy it. So, well,
I've heard that there's like the root, or some people will do tinctures versus powders. I've heard that research done, but I don't know if there's a lot of science to back up which one is better. I haven't seen anything on that.
Because the turkey, it's a whatever the specific term, because it's growing on, say, birch, right? To these dead, and you've got this. I have this specific name of the type of mushroom, the fungi that's growing on this side of the tree. But as far as you're right, often the tinctures are more potent, but they're using alcohol to concentrate it. But I don't know exactly what type. The stuff I've looked at is actually turkey tail, which is ground in. You can get it in a capsule, and as I think it's about 400 milligrams in each capsule.
I use Adored Beast. I really like that one. But there are, like you said, there's other ones ground up that do just as well. So,
but this one here, they're Temicinin. So it's this like really old. It's really popular. I mean, it's one of these old Chinese medicinal herbs, and it's primarily used as an for malaria. It really. So it's of all the different, if there's anything natural working against malaria, this is the only thing that does work. It's got lots of studies supporting it. But not just that, they're starting to look at it. There's a number of different cancers. And one of the things I mentioned, this hemangiosarcoma, or the cancer of the lining of the red blood cells, it often affects the spleen because it does a really good job of stopping new blood vessel growth. And that's one of the things that can happen. That's how many of the cancer cells spread. They grow these new blood vessels and then they can spread further. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going and looking at it because they're like, and it's just, when I say repurposing, it's been out for years and years and years. We know all about it, but I'm like, wait, maybe we should revisit this and have a look at it. So if I like, for instance, when Hoochie had hemangiosarcoma, I definitely would have used this if I had known about it then, but I didn't then. I do now. As one good option. I wanted to throw this in because it was kind of interesting. There's a type of skin cancer called cutaneous lymphoma. So that's these lymph node cells that are showing up in the skin. And for whatever reason, I don't know who figured this out. They gave them this safflower oil, which you guys can go buy in any grocery store. And they found really high doses of it. That huge percent of dogs that had this type of skin cancer, cutaneous lymphoma, responded to it, which is right. And so I just meant in here, if a dog had it, I would suggest a diet of, high protein, no carbs, 50% veggies, and then I'd be adding in the safflower oil at 1 teaspoon per 10 pounds of body weight. So it's just fat, vegetable, and oil, right, as a good option. And there's Hoochie. Okay, do you recognize that person, Eliza?
I think that's my mom. Yep.
Okay, that was many years ago. That was her first dog in practice. So he was this shepherd lab cross. Someone brought him in. He got brought into the clinic because he actually had parvo, and they said they weren't going to pay the bill. So I ended up inheriting him. That's right. That's the way you see lots of veterinarians with 3-legged dogs, and we had a cat that had diabetes, etc., because he seemed to inherit animals that have problems. Anyway, he was an awesome dog, but pointing at the age of 8, it didn't make any sense. He had hemangiosarcoma, and he died of this acute bleeding. So it's the lining of the red blood cells, and all of a sudden, you can just you might not notice your dog is sick, and all of a sudden they seem really weak, and his belly was a little bit distended, and turned out he had it. And by the time it got diagnosed, it unfortunately had already spread. But this one Chinese medicine called Yunnan Bio it works really well for bleeding. Even some of the referral veterinarians are suggesting and using it in dogs that ever have hemangiosarcoma because it makes such a big difference. They've tried it with there's nothing else conventionally that can match it. So it's just a good one for you guys to be aware of. And I definitely would have had Uji on this if I knew about it then.
This bought my parents' dog Max. I think some people will remember Max from my parents' page. He used to like skip and trot like a horse, but he had hemangiosarcoma of the liver, or wait, no, the spleen. And they put him on this, and it did buy him some time. It was already
they put him on these. Really?
Yeah, he was on. How do you say it? Yunin Bio.
Let's say Yunin Bio. Yeah.
Yunin Bio. Yeah. There's a lot of groups online that talk about this one in particular, in addition to diet and all that other things. But this definitely made a huge difference for him, even though it didn't completely fix it, you know, because it was already, we found it late. And that's the thing with this type of cancer is it's like you find it so late in the game that sometimes it's just, you know, but
it is.
Yeah.
And just our dogs are so much tougher than us. Like we would be complaining about something forever. And they still eat and drink and go out and exercise. They're a bit slower and we'd never know. And then, we're the weak ones. And I wanted to mention a couple of these veterinary dewormers. I've done lots of videos and talked lots about these. One is called Panacure. The name of the drug is actually called fenbendazole. And there's been lots and lots of discussion about the use of Panacure for cancer. So being repurposed. So in part, yes, about 10 or so years ago, the name of the person was Joe Tippins, who had cancer that had spread, metastatic cancer spread to all areas, stage 4 cancer, including his brain. No longer responded to chemo, and he had a friend who was a veterinarian who said, "No, there's been a bit of research about using Panacure. You may want to try using it." And this is a dewormer that I use lots in practice, and he did, and he responded like really well to the point. You know, and it wasn't just Panacure. He added in Panacure. He also added in CBD, and he also added in curcumin as well. But responded really well. So there's been a whole lot of talk about using Panacure. They think it can affect the cell wall of the cancer cells, making it more difficult for these cancer cells to grow and are ultimately killing them. Does it work for every dog? No, but is there potential for it to be very helpful? Yes. And for some animals, we're responding really well to it. Yeah. So it's kind of one of those things, and we use it a lot.
Tippins was a human.
So Joe,
yes. And it worked well for him. So
that's very true. Good point. Yes, Joe Tippins is a human. But the lots of people I know have responded on YouTube that have tried it. And I said it really made a big difference for their dog. And we use it so often in practice as a dewormer. We use it on dogs and cats, so really safe.
Isn't it used for Giardia, right? They use it to treat Giardia. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah. Yeah, it was a short course.
It doesn't have side effects or anything like that. It's commonly used. Yeah.
That's exactly it. It's originally for horses. And the other one, there's been a whole lot of research now into ivermectin or Ivamec, right? It's this dewormer got isolated from a bacteria that was growing in some chemist who scooped up a scoop of soil in a golf course, looked at a type of bacteria that was coming out of the soil and the active ingredient. He found that this bacteria or this soil organism was stopping every parasite from growing, and he isolated ivermectin. They're called Ivamec. And now it's been used for years in veterinary medicine as a dewormer for lots of animals, dogs and cats and cows and horses and pigs, etc., and sheep. But now they're looking at it, seeing it also has other potential benefits, including anti-cancer properties. And there's just lots of studies looking at it now too. Because what we're seeing is that lots of these conventional things aren't been that helpful. We have things that we know are safe for our dogs and cats because they've been used in thousands, if not millions. And maybe they've got other properties more than just being a simple dewormer. So, which I really like the idea of something conventional we've used, which is relatively safe.
A lot of people, I feel like, demonize ivermectin, but a lot don't realize that that's actually a key ingredient in most heartworm medications that are given on a regular basis. Yeah,
it is heartworm. Yeah, and to know that it came isolated, it was found from a type of bacteria called, I think, streptomyces, but isolated. Somebody scooped some soil and isolated what was in it, and that was where it came from. So
Still come
there's
from
some like,
see, there it is.
exactly, there's some natural basis to it. And then I want to mention the cannabinoids. Okay. So Courtney, you might have to talk about that. But these are, so as you can see here, there is Tucker. And Tucker's on a box.
Yes, Tucker's Gold, CBD,
right.
1,000 milligrams.
So part of these are the cannabinoids, which they know. So there's over 100 different ingredients in the cannabis plant, and which can do a whole bunch of potential positive things. But one of them is being potentially beneficial for some of the cancers. And they know that for some of the cancers in certain ways, they might make it more difficult for cancer cells to grow. They might make it more difficult for cancer cells to spread. Right? They might make it for the cancer cells to have new blood vessels called angiogenesis. Right. Mm-hmm. So there's a number of different cannabinoids for sure. CBD or cannabidiol is probably the most important one. But there's other things in. So this one I put in because this is Tucker's CBD, but there's other things in there, right? Courtney, as well as CBD.
We added ashwagandha, which is super good for regulation of hormones, specifically cortisol, because a lot of people use CBD for anxiety, but also turmeric, going back to the whole curcumin talk about using that as anti-inflammatory, anti-cancer properties. So we added that to make it kind of like an all-in-one type deal. But I always tell people, because there's been so many studies that show that CBD has a direct effect on tumor sizes. And there was one study in particular, I should have sent you the link, but it showed how CBD actually helped to reduce the size of a cancerous tumor. So that's why I feel like it's super important to add this along with, the mushrooms, the diet, not spraying your yard with pesticides. Like, it all comes into the big picture. But yeah, we created this for one of those reasons.
Nice. And the other thing because you've got other things in there, like you've got the turmeric, you said as ashwagandha, because you're right. For our little dog Tula happens to have serious dog anxiety, and anytime I put her on the exam table, she's not happy with about to be filmed, but it works really well for her for anxiety. So I can.
Yeah, or even dogs for 4th of July fireworks. They're terrified,
Yes.
Giving them a dose of that an hour beforehand will help lessen that anxiety. And I think too, dogs with anxiety, I mean, the whole big picture, it includes their mood. If they're getting a lot of exercise, that contributes to if your dog's going to be healthy and get cancer or not get cancer. And I think being able to control that anxiety it plays a big role in that, because I have anxiety really bad, and it gave me a lot of health problems. They say stress kills. And so I think that applies not only in humans, but in animals as well.
Definitely. And even now, we used to say, like we were taught, there's no real link between stress and disease. Of course, now it's the opposite. And like one really classic example is for all these cats that get urinary tract disease. Like, we know the single biggest thing that causes it is anxiety. They get stressed. More than anything else, it's stress.
Wow.
So yeah.
Crazy.
There's a big link between stress and disease. I wanted to mention, we also have so this actually is a picture of Eliza a couple years ago.
I think that was
with our last dog,
but
with our last dog, Lewis. Well, I think I might have made the picture a bit wide, Eliza. But regardless, but Lewis, unfortunately, he got a type of mouth cancer. He was about 12 or 13, and he was on. I was still partly working in the clinic, so I did surgery and a big growth that was went up in the back of his mouth, up into the back of his eye. So it was something we couldn't fully take out, but he was on a fentanyl patch. He was on some pretty strong other narcotic painkillers, and it was not working. It was only when I got a bit of a cannabinoid blend of different cannabinoids, including THC, that actually even gave him comfort and pain relief. But all these other strong vet drugs were not working. So I just wanted to mention a couple of the things. We also have a cannabinoid blend, which is a blend of CBD, but also some of the other ingredients in the cannabis plant. We have CBC, CBG, CBN. So these are other parts that are in the cannabis plant, which may be beneficial for if your dog has some of these more serious immune-related conditions. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is we're in about a week or now, we're having a webinar going into a bit more detail on just some of the stuff we talked about today, which is on and spending a bit more time. So I wanted to bring that up as well. But I think we're coming to the end now, you guys. So now we have a lot more time for
questions,
Eliza.
Well, there are so many.
You can make us bigger if you want to somehow.
You want, okay, close the screen from there.
Yeah. You already did that to Eliza. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Switching this all around. There we go. Okay.
Yes.
For questions. There's plenty, but I'm going to ask about ivermectin versus fenbendazole. I don't know how to say it entirely.
Fenbendazole, ivermectin, and fenbendazole. Yes.
So people have been asking lots of questions. I think you answered quite a few things about it when you were just talking about it. But someone was asking, should you use them together or should you use one over the other when wanting to use it for cancer? And also, how do you know if fenbendazole or ivermectin, how do you know if it's working?
So first, the research is more being researched into ivermectin. They really don't have like clear guidelines on doses yet, especially for dogs. When we use it in dogs, like Courtney just said, like it's in HeartGuard, like it's been used for 30 or 40 years. Mm-hmm. And we use it for other things like different types of mange dogs can get. But we're not really clear on like what an actual dose would be for cancer. So I'd be more inclined to suggest starting with something like the Panacur, the fenbendazole. And typically I would expect if you're going to see result, what I've seen with other people has been about a month of treatment where you're treating in a typical regimen is you treat how we would use a deworming dose. We would do 3 days on, 4 days off, right, at a certain level. And I think I might have in the slide I talked about the standard dog doses. We measure stuff the dose is considered 50 milligrams per kilo. So we say a dog like Tula size, she's about 22 pounds, which makes her about 10 kilos. So she would get 50 times 10, which is 500 milligrams. And I would give her that that dose. That was the standard deworming dose. I do that 3 days on, 4 days off. And then I would give that over the period of a month first. And if I saw her respond to that, then I would continue it. You're obviously doing this in conjunction with your veterinarian. You're not just sort of making up your own treatment, but you're saying, I also want to try this, right? And there has literally been thousands of dog parents who have used it and tried it.
And you have YouTube videos for people who are coming from Tucker's page. He has so many videos of specifically ivermectin and Panacur and the dosing. And there's so many people in the comments that are like, I use this on my dog. And you can like read real life reviews of people who've tried it and know that Dr. Jones isn't getting kickbacks from Panacur or ivermectin. So there's no incentive to be telling you other than we just want dogs to be healthy. We want dogs to live longer, healthier lives. So I feel like just seeing that, at least when I found your page a long, long time ago, I read those comments and I was like, wow, yeah, there's no incentive for this doctor. And I'm not saying that's with all vets, because vets love the animals.
No. But no, we can't sell, we can only just talk about stuff that works. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, I have some more about CBD things. First one, Courtney, someone was asking if the CBD helped with Tucker's back when he heard it.
Yes. Good time. So, chiropractic adjustment definitely did the trick, but we gave him CBD to help with the pain. I actually triple dosed him. And that's the beautiful thing about CBD is like he could drink this entire bottle and it's not going to hurt him. In fact, I take this, my grandma takes it for anxiety, but it also helps like with seizures and joint pain and arthritis and dogs who have hip dysplasia. It's cumulative too. So like if you give it every day versus just, oh, my hips hurt, let me just take it once. It does better over time. It like accumulates in the system. But it definitely helped his back a lot. And it helped when Todd was getting growing pains as a puppy. He was growing so fast.
Panostitis. Wow.
Yeah. Is that what that's called?
Yeah, it's called panostitis. Yeah, they call it growing pains. You have the fancy vet term.
Gator had it too, and he actually kind of grew a little bit. His feet kind of went side.
Oh, he did?
So fast, yeah. But yeah.
But yes, and as you said, it is like so safe as far as CBD. You take the bottle of it.
Also, if people want a discount code, if you've used Tucker 25, you get 25% off. And that's just for this month because we're running like a special for July 4th for all the dogs who are like afraid of fireworks. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
That'll be good. Okay, well, some more questions on CBD for you too. Well, someone was asking just first, can cats use CBD?
Yes.
Great. Second.
Yeah, and also, so I was going to say, it's really good for urinary tract disease. So if these cats have repeated urinary tract problems and inflammation, because one, it's anti-inflammatory, right? So it takes away bladder inflammation, which is lots of these cats, that's the underlying problem. And also, but the primary cause of it is often anxiety, like it's stress. Maybe you have an indoor cat and he's hissing at the outdoor cat that's walking back and forth in front of his windows, his heart rate's up. So you take away his anxiety and then all of a sudden he feels better.
Wow.
And that works.
I know that about cats. That is wild. That is really crazy. My friend literally just had his cat had to go to the ER because it was having problems with the bladder. So maybe I need to say, stop stressing out your cat, dude. No, I'm kidding.
CBD.
You got to give him some CBD.
Just before I move on to another question, I'm just also seeing some comments about Tucker's Gold, and people are asking where to buy it.
Yeah, so we have, if you go on our social media pages, you can find it in the links. But if you just search Tucker's Gold CBD on Google, it'll pop up. It's through the website kingcanine.com. We partnered with King Canine. They've been making CBD for several years. We've been advertising for them for a long time because we really like their product. And we're like, let's make something together because I was sick of seeing dogs dying from cancer. And it just happened. I was like, it's a perfect fit. And we've been giving it to Tucker for a long time. I'm actually going to tell everybody a little something that I didn't know if I wanted to share or not. But Tucker actually had a very rare cancer in his mouth. And we found it, I think he was 4 years old. He had like a little cyst in his mouth, and it ended up being oral papillary squamous cell carcinoma. And it's a very rare, and it's not super aggressive, but it's very rare that dogs get it. And of course, he had the surgery, but we didn't get clear margins. And we applied all of this. We applied the diet. We applied the mushrooms. Don't spray your yard. Pay attention to the kind of water your dog is drinking. I don't give the dogs tap water. They're real bougie. The treats we give are not loaded with carbohydrates, CBD, all sorts of different supplements. And we actually went and started seeing a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Bannock, and she helped us like kind of guide us through all this stuff and what to give and what not to, and no signs of it returning. So we're really happy about that. Right. Yeah.
So, and he's on the CBD then now regularly?
He gets it every single day. Yep. And then when he's anxious, because as he got older, he never used to care about thunderstorms or fireworks. As he got older, he started getting really scared about it. So we doubled some on those days, and he's just calm as a cucumber. And it doesn't make, I think a lot of people think that CBD will make your dog like drugged. It's not like the typical drugs you get from the pharmacy that are going to make them high or whatever. And there's some CBD that has THC, but ours does not have THC, and it's not the one that's going to make you high or make you not yourself. It just calms down the nervous system, as well as a plethora of other things it does.
And I actually had a client who had another type of mouth cancer. I think it was a type of melanoma. But I mean, that dog lived for almost, and this was prior because it's been a bit longer for it to become legal in Canada. So this was just yet to be really discussed in the veterinary world. But that's what he was, a little terrier mix. And I think he lived 4 or 5 years. Like he was given 3 months. It was pretty aggressive type of mouth cancer. And he started on mostly a CBD, a CBD mix. And I think it had a little bit of THC because it was mostly directed towards people. Mm-hmm. But that was his primary treatment. That was it. and he did so well on that. So yeah, it was part of the reason why I was like, okay, well, I need to look into, using this and getting this for dogs.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
That's awesome with Tucker, though. I didn't. Wow.
Yeah. It was a very scary moment, and we didn't tell people because we didn't want people to be scared, or we already get comments about, oh, he looks old, blah blah blah, he's gonna die soon, and I'm like, shut up, I don't want to hear that.
Yeah, no, you don't want to hear that.
And then when we found that, it was just so unexpected, and it scared us half to death. But he's even got reoccurring, because they had to take out quite a bit, even though they didn't get clear margins. The bone is even growing back. So like his body has really bounced back from what he went through with that. So
when they actually took a section of his mandible, like part of the bone.
Yeah, quite a bit. He lost his tooth. I think he lost 2 teeth on this side, but they took quite a bit. And originally she suggested, because she didn't get clear margins, she's like, well, maybe we should go in and do it again, but I'd have to take even more out of it. I'm like, well, I panicked, because she also suggested like radiation treatment and stuff like that. And then I really panicked because that's a little bit more invasive and there's side effects with that. But I was like, all right, well, let me go and see this natural doctor and see what they suggest. And it's been years and it has not come back. So
that's awesome. Yeah. And they say 5 years is a real big window. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Now the news is out. Yeah, Tucker is 7 now. I see someone is in the chat. Yeah. Someone said Mr. Linda's in the chat, which is my husband.
That's awesome. Well, Eliza's gonna like that. Okay,
that's really funny. Well, I have some more questions about CBD from some people. One of them is asking if CB2 is safer for dogs than CBD.
CB2. So there's receptors like CB1, CB2 receptors. I'm not sure what there's different other cannabinoids. I don't know what CB2 is. There's CBD, like we have CBC, which is cannabichromine, and there's CBN and CBG. There's probably 100 different types of cannabinoids in the cannabis plant, but CBD and THC are the 2 ones that are most known, and CBD is the one that's got the clear most medicinal benefit, and THC would be what you would have taken as a teenager, Eliza.
Okay. Nice. That took a second for me to process.
Same. Okay, well, moving on from that. Someone else was asking, this will be my last CBD related question. Should CBD not be given if your dog is taking carprophene, because it might cancel each other out?
So that is like Remedies, right? That's the anti-inflammatory. No, you can do it both. The only thing is there's an enzyme in the liver called the cytochrome P450, which metabolizes lots of the different medications. Mm-hmm. But if you're using CBD at that sort of suggested dose, it's about 3 milligrams of CBD per 10 pounds of body weight. So if you give that at that level, then there's not going to be an interaction with, if you're always using this advised dose of Remedies. And ideally, you could maybe lower that Remedies dose, like the carprophene dose, would be better. If you could lower the Remedies dose and maybe double the CBD dose, would be much safer. Your dog, but no, it won't at that level. Won't cause an interaction.
Okay. Someone else has asked about their dog's a senior dog. They're 14 years old, and they have an anal gland tumor / mass, and they are scheduled for surgery quite soon. They're asking for some advice, like, is he too old to have this surgery, or do you think it's worth it that he should get that removed?
Do I think that? So these anal gland carcinomas, that's the type of glandular tumor you're going to get. The dogs we actually saw, most of them did pretty well with surgery. But they can use much safer anesthesia now, assuming they're going to do blood work on your dog ahead of time to make sure the organ function is okay. There's much safer anesthetic choices now to make sure it's safe for your dog for anesthesia. You want to make sure, obviously, they'll have your dog on IV fluids, and you want to make sure they have some type of warming pad So your dog's body temperature stays consistent during surgery, and you have someone there that's monitoring, so they can make surgery really safe. Like a 14-year-old dog that's got pretty good organ function could be fine. But that would be, in my experience, like that was a surgery, that was a type of cancer that responds well to surgery. So I would be inclined to say, yeah, do it. And then follow up with some of the things that we've just been discussing, like the CBD, for instance, as a long-term supplement.
Okay. Another question I've seen quite a few times just in different ways is people are just asking for what are some of the signs of cancer? Like what should they look for in their dog if they might have cancer?
Courtney, is there some stuff that because you get lots of dog questions.
I feel like a lot of dogs, you can't even tell. I mean, I feel like, in my opinion, I feel like people should get their dog's blood done at least for me personally. What I do is I get the dog's blood check every year. Sometimes I go, like I just got Todd done and got him checked out so that I can see if there's any fluctuations from the normal, not just like never going to the vet. And then when I go, I don't know what's normal for Todd or what's normal for Tucker. Yeah. Some like raw fed dogs, for instance, their liver enzymes run lower or higher or whatever. There's
probably a little bit higher.
Yeah. So there's different fluctuations to watch out for, I feel like, with that. But I think just looking at your dog, feeling them regularly and like touching their bodies and seeing if you can find any lumps. Because I feel like even Tucker has a few cysts on him. And it wasn't until like I really was looking for it that I would have found it because they were just so small. But
that's a good, yeah.
I feel like a lot of people, for the most part, they can't really tell. And I think that's why ever more so it's so important that we do things precautionary and not be like, well, if they get cancer, then I'll deal with it. More so like, let's do what we need to do now to help set the body up for success so that hopefully they don't get it. Yeah.
And there's a lot, depending on the cancer, depending on the clinical sign. So, but for some dogs, for lots of things, like our first dog, Gucci, all he showed was he's a little bit slower exercise-wise. And he was that way because he was slightly anemic. But there wasn't any obvious thing to see there. But that was one big sign. Or for instance, with some of these dogs that have lymphoma, like sometimes the first thing people will notice is they might feel a bit of a lump under the corner of their dog's, the angle of their jaw, right? That would be one of the lymph nodes, or a lymph node just in front of their shoulder blade or their scapula. But they see this lump. Or for something like with what you just described, Courtney, with Tucker, maybe with him, you probably didn't, I don't know how you first noticed it. Maybe he, like, was he drooling a little bit, or?
We just noticed it was like a bump. It looked like a cyst in his mouth. And the weird thing is it went away and then it came back. So even more so, I thought it was a cyst, and even the vet. So the only reason that we could figure out that it was something more than that was because he went in for a professional dental cleaning, which I hate putting my dogs under anesthesia, but Tucker has enamel hypoplasia, so he has to get those cleanings regularly. So that's how we found it with him.
Right. So obviously the big advanced things are, it's going to affect their appetite. They may be drinking more, drinking less, increased urination, or vice versa. Obviously, depending on the type of cancer. But so the big takeaway is like doing regular exams, even like once a week. Like learn how to do a basic home veterinary exam on your dog at home, and like know what normal is. What you said, like no just normal temperature, pulse, respiration. Know their weights. Maybe get an idea what normal is, because some of these dogs, one of the first signs is unexplained weight loss, and their weight starts to go down because your metabolic rate goes up with cancer as your weight drops. But if, for instance, Tula's 25 pounds and all of a sudden she's 17, like that should be a big red flag, and then you're in to see your veterinary. And the idea of doing a blood work once a year is a good, to get a good, as Courtney said, to know what baseline is a good, that's just a good suggestion if you're able to afford that and do that for sure.
Well, I still have lots more questions. Do you guys want me to ask some more? I'm just seeing at the time that we are at. So what are you guys feeling?
We got at least another 5 minutes, Eliza.
Yeah.
We must be getting late because you guys are in Michigan, so that's 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
That's almost my bedtime. Okay.
Do you still have light there though? Like that's
yeah, we do.
Lovely.
It stays like about 9:30, 10 o'clock now.
Summer now.
Time dark at 5.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll ask you a few more questions then for you guys. Okay. There's just not super relevant to cancer, but people have been asking quite often just about getting their teeth professionally cleaned. And then you were mentioning, Courtney, that was something that like Tucker gets done. So someone's asking, like, is it necessary to get your dog's teeth professionally cleaned often, or can you also just do like your at-home cleanings if your dog will allow that? Like, what are both your thoughts on that?
You're asking me about dental cleaning?
Yes.
So with the last dog, Lewis, which you were pictured there with, he was never had to go in to see the veterinarian to do a dental cleaning. So he was never under anesthesia for that, because he would let me do some just basic home scaling. He was this very relaxed lab cross, and I would ply him with a little bit of a treat, and especially the treat after the fact, and he would let me scale the bit of plaque and tartar around his gum line. And I mean, he had great teeth throughout his life with that. So if your dog's able to do that, I know veterinary wise, we were taught like the only way you can clean a dog's teeth properly is you need to put them under anesthesia and do a full dental scale and polish. And for some dogs, like our little dog Tula, she won't let me do anything. That's probably the case. But for lots of dogs, like I'll bet you with Todd and Tucker, you could probably do some basic, like, they'll probably let you do something.
We like to use I don't know, I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Judy Morgan. She has a dental spray.
Yeah.
We use coconut oil, and then we mix in the dental spray, and then we just brush their teeth that way. But Tucker unfortunately has enamel hypoplasia, so his teeth look really bad no matter what. But even with Todd, like I'll just give him raw bone, and it acts like a toothbrush and gets some of that stuff out of it. But yeah, and they make natural, like it doesn't have to be under anesthesia teeth cleanings either. Even our vet, they offer scaling where somehow they're able to calm these dogs down enough so they'll just sit back and they'll let them go in and take some of that plaque and all that stuff off without anesthesia. So I think that's something that people could consider as well.
Yeah, and I'd say we've seen that. I mean, that's our veterinary where I am. That's fairly controversial, and they don't want to sanction it. But there's lots of dogs that I saw that had anesthesia-free dental cleaning, and their teeth looked really good. So I mean, they might use some of these natural sedatives. They might use valerian. Maybe they've used CBD or something. Yeah. And just like you and I, if we go to the dentist and we get our teeth scaled, and we don't go under general anesthesia. Right. So. Right. And that's what we're doing with their dogs. We'd scale them and then you fill up with polishing. Right. So if a dog is okay with that, you could potentially consider that. And I'm of the same opinion. If you don't have to use anesthesia, it's much better. Agreed.
Okay. Okay. I have another one that's not dental related. Someone was talking about how their dog recently had a lump discovered on their nipple, and they've been doing some remedies like DMSO with aloe, Benadryl, and they're going to plan on starting CBD, but they're just asking how long should they wait before going to the vet?
So I mean, there's certain things around lumps and bumps, right? How is it firm or is it loosely attached? Is it slow growing or rapidly growing? If it's in the mammary gland, like in your nipple, then I would be worried about a breast cancer as a possibility. And those generally feel really firm and hard. Often they feel like a nodule or like a pea. At the very least, if you're not sure, like just going for an exam is, I mean, you can just go in and you want a veterinary exam and someone's like best opinion of what they think it is. I mean, that's definitely worth it regardless. First.
Yeah. Here in the States, they'll do the needle aspirate and they'll look at it under a microscope, and they can usually tell you at least what kind of, if it is a tumor or if it's a cyst, and if they have to send it off for further testing.
Yeah, you can get a pretty good idea in the clinic. Exactly. And we used to do that. Yeah. So that was how I would say, Les. If you're not sure and it feels like a lump and it's there, I would be more inclined to at least just get it checked up first.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Another one was just back to the Yunin bio.
Yes.
That someone was just asking how often and how much should you give to your dog if you know what that.
It's in the slide, but I think you have to look at the slide. Or not. I think it's if you probably don't have access to the slides, do you?
Do you want me to add that back in?
Let me see. Oh yeah. Do you find that? There it is, right there.
Okay.
There's their suggested dosage guidelines, right? Based on your bio. Yeah, actually, you can keep talking there. I think I have. I have it at the back somewhere because we actually have a Chinese medicine clinic where we live. So I actually picked some up because I did a video on it in particular. And just seeing how well it's worked for a number of dogs. I'm like, okay, because hemangiosarcoma, it's so difficult to treat, and like you can have these rapid bleeding so quickly, right? So at the very least, like you're knowing your dog is going to die, but if you can actually have a period of time there's never a good time as anyone's going to know that's had a dog that's died, but at least to know that, you've had this healthy dog and then 3 weeks later they died. It's just so hard to get used to that. So at least to know for a period of time, I'm like, okay. And if this can help, I think that's a super good option.
Okay, here, I'll change back to the other screen as well. Okay, another question is linking back to vaccines and cancer. Just, do you think there is a link between vaccines and cancer in dogs?
Do I think there's a link? Yes.
Either of you.
I'm not gonna. I was just nodding, but I want him to answer because
right. Okay.
Essentials.
So my example would be something like our first dog Hoochie, because we were taught like it was most of the time it was actually yearly vaccines we're doing most of the time, and he got a booster at 8 weeks, and then 12 weeks, and 16 weeks, and then he got a few other, and it was a combination. It was distemper, adeno, parainfluenza, parvo. Then that boosted again, and then he had the chemical vaccine, and then the rabies vaccine, and he had a yearly initially. I mean, that was a few years ago. Don't want to date myself too much, but he was getting yearly vaccines along with some other conventional stuff. He was on flea and tick stuff, and he was on meds for heartworm. Like he was on all these different conventional treatments because initially that's what I was taught. And if I'm telling clients that, I should be treating my own dog the same way. And he, I won't name the brand, but it's something diet dog food he ate, like kibble, because that's what I was selling in the clinic. So he ate it. That's what he had. And there he is at the age of 8, and he has hemangiosarcoma. I'm like, okay. And one of the big things I really wonder about was I probably shouldn't have given him that many vaccines for all those years. So do I think there's a link? Yes, right? You repeatedly stimulate the immune system, and you're putting in this foreign body, these antigens into your dog, injecting them in. It's just one more thing amongst all those other things we've talked about, including what can be in the pet food, including what your dog's exposed to, including having them spayed or neutered at a really young age, that make it more likely for them to get cancer. Is it just the vaccine? No, but do I think it's part of it? Especially when you're giving a whole bunch of vaccines repeatedly often? Yeah, I think there is a link for sure.
Okay.
People asking about flea and tick preventative natural versions of that. I think a lot of people in the Tucker audience would like to know, like, what you would suggest.
What would I suggest? So obviously the ticks are more challenging, although we've been researching some newer kind of essential oils, and some of the other like alternative ways are being discussed. One of the things I saw that was steady, they looked at all these different potential oils that could repel ticks, and the one they actually found was the most effective was turmeric essential oil. Like of all the different oils, it had the best tick repellent properties, which I was just like, huh. And its one actually is pretty darn safe for our dogs, because some of the essential oils like tea tree oils, potentially pretty toxic, right? It's one you just never want your dog to ingest. But turmeric was a really like, wow, that's kind of neat. So we know that even lots of the essential oils, like there's one called cedarwood oil, there's one called the turmeric essential oil I just talked about, which are have like some good repellent properties. But as far as fleas go, I mean, I always say like the base thing obviously is you're gonna get a flea comb and regularly check your dog. Like
I feel like are fleas really common? Is that something that happens a lot?
On the coast, depending on where you are, like where you live. Like if it's humid, so on the West Coast, when I was in Vancouver, that area, that was, I mean, we often saw, and on the east or west, on the coast especially, we saw lots and lots of fleas.
Wow. Right. Because I don't feel like I hear of a lot of flea issues here in Michigan, but personally, what I've been using is, and it's not perfect, because obviously it's not going to be like tick medication where if it bites your dog, they're going to die. But I've been using, it's like an ultrasonic device that attaches to the collar of your dog. And
a number of people have talked about it. How well is that working?
Yeah, it seems to work really well when I remember to put the collars on. But I use that. And then I also use, again, Dr. Judy Morgan has a spray that has cedar wood in it. There's a couple of different essential oils. And so I make sure that like if we're going outside, I'll spray them, just a light mist around their body. And obviously it's not going to be perfect. Like I will not let my dogs go in tall grasses where I know there's going to be ticks. But we don't really have a big tick problem with the dogs. I mean, occasionally we'll find one, but they're never latched. And is it true that, and this is a question for you, I'm going to ask, is it true that ticks are more attracted to dogs that have a higher blood sugar level? Like, can they smell that or sense that? Because I've heard that in the raw dog community, but I didn't know if that was true or not.
Okay, not that I've read or seen or heard, but it seems like, just like you said, some animals seem to come in with way more ticks than others. There's something that makes them more attractive to it.
Right.
And the concern, and I don't know where some of you guys are. Obviously, the concern is Lyme disease for sure, and some of those other tick-borne diseases. Like there's Lyme disease and Ehrlichia and Anaplasma, and about 6 or 7 different things like pathogens. Ticks are just little pathogen critters that they can carry, but they usually need to be on your dog for a period of time before they can pass that and be infected. Like for instance, Lyme disease, at least 24 hours. But just like your dogs go outside, you just thoroughly check them. Like you're using some of the essential oils, whether it be some of the things we talked about. They definitely have some repellent properties. They just don't last as long as, the conventional stuff, right? Like you can't just give them a Brevecto pill and then you're great for the next month or so, right? So it just, you need to be doing it more consistently, more often. But in lots of cases, it potentially be a lot safer than giving them those conventional oils.
Even it causes problems not only for dogs to use those treatment. Like a lot of people will use the tick preventative collars that have built in. And there's been so many cases of like children will go to bed hugging the dog and they fall asleep and their child starts having seizures or something going on with the kids. So it's not only bad for our dogs, but humans as well that are touching them.
But and then as far as other so for flea stuff, just in the house, they say if you want to make sure that you have fleas like it to be warm and they like high humidity, right? So if you can have an air conditioner, keep the temperature cool, lower humidity in your house, you can have less number of fleas in your house. Things like diatomaceous earth are just a good option as far as looks like a white ground. It's just a natural occurring mineral that's found in the earth. It looks like flour. And it looks like you've seen me sprinkle that onto a that she turns all white, Eliza.
Yep.
So you can sprinkle on the cracks and crevices in your house. You sprinkle it on top of your dog, for instance, or your cat. And then I would just use a flea comb to spread it through. So it works by drying out, say, the outside coating of the flea. But the problem is it also does dry out your dog's coat. So you don't want to do it much more than once a week. And make sure they have a good oil in there as well, so they don't get too dried out. And there's a number of different like alternative flea and flea under tick sprays that have a combination of some of the different essential oils, which seem to work pretty well. And there's some of the new collars where they've embedded some of the essential oils in them, which seem to help. And I'm just curious about the ultrasonic one too. This is the ultrasonic tick repellent. We actually just picked one up. I wanted to try it, but we're in an area where there are very few ticks, so I've yet to try it.
Yeah. I mean, we used it last year. I think it lasts for like 4 months or something like that. It just stays on all the time. But yeah, it seemed to work for us. But,
okay.
Yeah.
Right, because I was going to actually send it to someone who's in an area that has ticks. I wanted them to try it out and do a YouTube video. So that, obviously, that's be so much better than anything else.
Yeah, and like with anything, it's not going to be perfect. It's you got to still keep an eye out, but at the same time, it beats giving your dog potential cause of cancer or other thing that could ruin their system.
Agreed.
Cool. This is exciting. I'm really glad that, we got together to talk about all this stuff because, like I said, people have been asking me questions nonstop about what should I do? What shouldn't I do? And I'm like,
nice.
You're the medical professional, not me.
Okay. Well,
are we coming near the end of our live stream, moderator?
I'm losing hours. It's going to get dark here for me.
Yes, we're coming to the end of our live stream.
There's still plenty of questions, obviously, that haven't been answered. And don't worry for everyone who's watching. I am trying to write them down and take note. After this, we'll try and go through and answer as many as we can. But thank you so much for everyone who has watched. I'll let these two say what they have. Anything you guys would like to say?
Yes. Yeah. So I want to first thank you guys. Thanks everybody for being here and for being patient with our live stream hiccups. I'm really glad that we could have Tucker and Todd and Courtney.
Yeah, maybe we're going to say goodbye. Tucker, you want to say goodbye? Well, now he's in nap mode. Come here, sweet baby.
It's bedtime. Where's the guys are ready for?
There's the king. He's got to say hello.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, he's so cute.
What do you say? What do you say?
Good boy.
Can you say thank you?
That's awesome.
What do you say? What?
Aw.
What?
Good boy.
He just got up from a nap, so he's like, Todd. Okay, Todd, what do you want to say?
Todd now?
Oh, okay.
That's awesome.
That's so impressive. I love that.
Okay. Yep, I can't say anything better than that.
Yeah.
No, we really appreciate everybody, especially with your patience in the beginning. But I think a lot of people logged in. I did see some people are like, what is the point of this? But just to reiterate, the whole point is, I'm a huge fan of doing all things natural. And I'm a firm believer that it makes all the difference in our dog's health. And I've been following Dr. Jones for a long, long time. Like as soon as we got Tucker and Todd, it was like doing all the research, trying to figure out what was good for them and what wasn't. And I feel like, to share that information with other people is important. I think everybody deserves to give their dogs the best chance at life and the longest, healthiest life that they can. And I don't feel like that information is readily available as it should be, so to get more people to you and to hear what you have to say about this stuff, I think is important. And I'm glad that some people did join, but not as many as we thought because of the technical difficulties. But next time we're going to have it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next time we're going to have it right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So thanks everybody. So this will be up on the different channels. Is that right?
I think it's only actually going to be up on Veterinary Secrets due to our technical difficulties and it not connecting to Courtney's. So it will be up as a recording though on Veterinary Secrets, so we can watch through that again. And
then we'll just send the file to.
Yeah, you guys just send us a file.
Yeah, we can send a link for that. Again, for the people's questions who did not get answered. We will try and go through those and get as many of those answered as we can. And if not, and you still have further questions, don't forget that Dr. Jones is doing a webinar He'll be going more into detail on cancer and all cancer-related topics next Tuesday at 5 p.m. PST. So you can go ahead and try and watch that if you also want some more questions, or your questions answered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thanks, Todd.
You guys take care. Good night.
Okay.
I'll be ending it now. Okay.
Right.